Hello everyone, welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to talk about editing. So editing is an important part of our work because not only it's going to help us to enhance the aesthetic and the technical quality of our image, it also helps us to better realize our creative vision and better to communicate with our audience. Some people will say, okay, I know editing, I know dodge and burn, frequency separation, I know all the tools on Photoshop, I've been using Photoshop for many years. Well, I think to understand how to use a tool is easier, but to learn what change you need to make on the image and on what extent, how much change you need to make on that particular aspect is a completely different story, and they usually take much longer time to master. And that's exactly what this video is about. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 tips that will help you to edit your photo more effectively and more naturally. After watching this video, you will have a much better idea of what change you should make on certain image, different scenario and different purpose. And you can apply this to your workflow no matter what software you're using. Sounds interesting? Let's get started. Okay, the first thing, understand how light works on different surface. Light falls evenly on flat surface, but as the surface starts curve, the light and shadow start changing. The transition between the light and shadow will be different depends on how curvy it is. So the more curvy the surface, the harsher the transition will be. So as you notice, there are many curved surfaces on our face. Some are more curvy than the other. For example, the nose, the eyebrow will be more curvy than the face and the cheek and the forehead. So the transition between the light shadow will be different on these different surfaces. And our eyes are quite sensitive to this. So why this is important for editing? Because when you do the editing, many people will turn to do this, they smooth the skin. So when you do this, if you're not aware of this transition between light and shadow based on different curve, if you don't understand this, and you accidentally change the transition between the light and shadow, you end up changing the form of somebody's face. Some tools are very vulnerable for this. For example, frequency separation. Actually, there are many photographers complaining about when they're using this process, actually change a person's face too much, and this is exactly the reason. There are some other tools there that actually they're much better in terms of this. For example, dodge and burn. Dodge and burn for me is much less destructive when you're dealing with the transition between light and shadow. This is why I prefer dodge and burn more than frequency separation. But some people say, yeah, dodge and burn is too time consuming, and they're right. You're definitely gonna spend more time when you're doing dodge and burn, but you got a natural result. The other thing is actually there are some really good plugins will help you to speed up this process. One is I highly recommend is Retouching for Me. There are 2 plugins I use almost on every single image that I work on. One is the spot healing tool. The second is the dodge and burn tool. With these 2 plugins, I basically just eliminate like 80% of the workload, and then those like a repetitive time-consuming work can be easily done with just a couple of clicks. I highly recommend that. They also have some other plugins, like for example, the eye enhancement, taking care of the veins on the white part of the eye. Those are super useful as well. So check it out. Next one, understand how light and shadow change as the light source position change. There are some photographers, probably many photographers, they use this type of process, they call it contouring. So basically they add a light and shadow on subject's face to make it more 3D. For example, they will add the light on the forehead, on the cheek, and they add a shadow by the side of the face, and then underneath the eyebrow, underneath the chin. So that way it looks more 3D, and it can also make a person more slimmer. But the problem is this type of contouring only works for certain lighting condition. But as we do photo shoot, the lighting condition could be very different. Sometimes the light could come from a completely different angle, and then apparently this type of contouring is going to cause your issue. For example, take a look at this photo. This one, the key light is actually from below because the sun hit the concrete ground and then bounced the light back. So what happened is the light and shadow, the position of light and shadow is almost the reverse of what we normally do in contouring. So if you just apply the old way contouring, you basically just neutralize the difference between the light and shadow. You're gonna make her face super flat. Some other scenario will be, sometimes it could be your subject is turning away from the camera. So only the side of her face is facing the camera. And that way the contouring is not going to work as well. Because for example, if you want to, normally you're going to add the shadow on by the temple or by the side of the face, but this time it's facing the light, it's actually where the light is supposed to be. The other situation could be the lighting scenario is the light is uneven. What I mean by that is like one side of the subject's face is much brighter than the other side of, for example, shore lighting. And then on this image, you can also see the light source actually from the side, also a little bit lower position. So it's like lighting from below plus from the one side. So when you're doing the contouring, if you're doing it all the way, it's not going to work as well. So how exactly are we going to do this contouring thing? I do think contouring will benefit a photo. We just need to be more careful when we do this. We need to understand how the light and shadow change when the light source position changes. And it's not very hard to do this because you don't have to do like hundreds of photo shoots to understand this. There are some tools can help us to make it much easier to learn. One tool is like this. So I bought this from just like our store, and this is very useful because I can if I do editing, then I get confused like, okay, so exactly how this is supposed to be work, and then I basically just grab this and then I grab like a little light, LED light. I move the light around kind of basically the same position as the photo shoot, and then it'll give me a much better idea of where the light and shadow is supposed to be. And then if you do this long enough, if you do this long enough, you will build a memory, so you don't even need to rely on the reference anymore. You can just do the editing, you can just, because you remember everything. So it's much better to do it that way. So don't just apply contouring no matter what the lighting is. You truly need to understand how it changed, and that way your editing gonna look much more natural. Next one, don't ignore the background. Background is an important part of our portrait, no matter this is on location or this is in studio. Let me give you some example. For example, this shot was in La Push Beach in Washington a couple years ago. So when I took this shot, it was near sunset. It's overcasting day, so you really can't see the difference of the lighting change. The only difference was it's much darker. So in order to make sure I capture enough information, I just overexposed the image a little bit to make sure I maintain enough information. But the thing is, the photo gonna look like this was shot during the daytime. It's kind of like, it's not like consistent with the story. So how can we fix that? So in order, instead of just like dark everything, I only dark the backgrounds. After I dark the background, you can see it matched the story much better. Not just that, it also make my subject a lot more stand out from the background. But it doesn't mean when we're dealing with dark background, editing the background, we always need to darken it. Sometimes you need to do the opposite. So take a look at this image. This photo was shot later on when it's completely dark. I have to use LED light to add more light to the model's face. So basically I just use the LED pointing on a piece of log and bounce back to her face. And then the warm color kind of complement with the background cold color. So it looked pretty good. But the thing is, there's not enough information about the background. There's not enough information to tell where the model was. So to fix that, I need to brighten the background, and not the whole background, just certain area. I figure just above her, that little area need a little bit more brightness. So I just adjust the exposure of that area and reveal some more information on the background, and then the viewer can see more about where the location is. It's much better on telling the story. So let's take a look at some examples about the studio. So this thing applies to studio as well. Background can change the mood of photo dramatically, even if it's a studio shoot. Sometimes you want the background very nice, evenly lit, very nice and even. So it gives you a feeling of very clean, very high-end commercial fashion look. But sometimes you want to have some grading in the backgrounds. That way you can direct viewer's attention more to your subject, and they also help to create the feeling that your subject belongs to the background. And of course, in the real world, you probably not capture everything perfectly on camera, and then some work need to be done. The thing is, you need to know what changes need to make depends on what look you want to create. Of course, there are certain things like the tiny little things, especially on studio shoot, like the paper is not clean, the things like the background's not even, you need to do some actual work for that. And that backs to the plugin as well. And because this work can be very time consuming, but with plugin, it's much easier to do that. Retouching for me has the background cleanup plugin. And then I'll leave the link below, check it out. It's gonna make your work a lot easier, make everything much more effective. The last one, spend some time to learn human anatomy. This will help you a lot on your editing. I'm not saying you need to know every single bone or muscle of a human being, but at least you need to understand these two things. The first is how our facial structure change as we age. The second is the facial structure difference between men and women. So when you do portrait photography long enough, you're gonna have a client come ask you, can you make me look younger? Can you make me look slimmer? But how you do this naturally, you need to understand human anatomy. Not only gonna help you to do this naturally, it also will help you to work more effectively. Let's start from the first one, how our facial structure changes as we aging. So when we're young, the soft tissues under our skin is more firm, more full. But as we aging, they start losing volume. So what happens, like certain area gonna become more obvious than the other. Around the eye area, for example, this area they call the tear trough. When we're young, it's less obvious, but as we aging, the tear trough gonna start extending. It's gonna extend more and more, and then when they do this, the back gonna be more obvious, and then the eye socket feels like it starts sinking in more. And then also around the mouth area, this fold gonna become more and more deeper. Under the corner of your mouth gonna become more and more obvious as well, because the soft tissue under the skin gonna become losing volume, become more saggy. The face is gonna start drooping down. So what happens is the jawline gonna be less defined. So basically, when you're younger, your face is more like this way, but when you get older, your face is more like this way. And there's some other minor difference as well. For example, the distance between the lower of your nose and the upper of your tip gonna be extending. The distance between the corner of your mouth is gonna get wider and wider. And then when you're young, your mouth line is more like a straight, but when you're getting older, it starts curving down. It's more like a grumpy face. And there's other theory, and then it helps as well, is then people believe like after we grow up, our facial structure stop growing, but your nose still keep growing. So that's why you see many older people, they seem to have a bigger nose, and that's why. So how you can make a person younger? So you basically just reverse all these, right? And make sure you're not overdoing it. So that way you can quickly make someone younger without editing out a single wrinkle. Next one, the facial structure difference between men and women. Some people have a hard time editing portrait of men because they tend to make the guy look girlish, and they don't know why. Actually, it's only two things you need to pay attention to. So the two main difference between men and women is the jawline and the forehead. So the jawline of men is more angled, more defined, but the women's jawline is more smooth. That's one thing. The second thing is the forehead. The women's forehead is more convex and curvy, but the man's forehead is more straight down, and then there's a very obvious convex around the eyebrow area. So these are two main differences. So when you're editing the photo, like the guy asks you, making me look slimmer. So you kind of like, you make the face a little bit narrower. But when you do this, if you're not careful, and then you mess up the jawline, you're gonna make that guy look more girlish. Same thing when you're editing the forehead, you're trying to smooth everything, but you make it too smooth, you end up destroy the definition of the eyebrow area, which is more obvious on the male than female, and then you're gonna make the guy look more girlish. Okay, so this is it. This is what I want to show you guys about editing, and it's very different from the normal editing video. Like normally people just talk about how to use this tool, how to use that tool, and then record a video from start to finish. I found that's kind of boring. I feel this way usually you will get better result, and then you will learn more in a shorter time. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and then if you have any questions, leave a comment, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.